What if the nephew of one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived suddenly found himself standing in his uncle's shoes? Not at a family gathering. Not in a private rehearsal. But in front of millions of people around the world. Imagine carrying the Jackson name. Imagine growing up surrounded by music legends. Imagine having Michael Jackson as your uncle, and then being asked to play him on the big screen. That is the extraordinary story of Jaafar Jackson. A singer, an actor, a member of one of the most famous musical families in history. But behind the famous surname is a young man who has spent years trying to discover something even more important. His own identity. And today, we're taking a closer look at Jaafar Jackson's early life, family, education, music career, love life, his journey into acting, and the legacy he is beginning to build. Because Jaafar's story is not simply about being Michael Jackson's nephew. It's about what happens when you're born into greatness, and still have to prove yourself. The Jackson bloodline. Jaafar Jeremiah Jackson was born on July 25, 1996. In Los Angeles, California. And from the moment he entered the world, music was already running through his family tree. His father was Jermaine Jackson. And that name alone carries enormous musical history. Jermaine was one of the original members of the legendary Jackson 5, the group that helped transform a young Michael Jackson into a global superstar. But Jaafar's family connection didn't stop there. His uncles included Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon and Randy Jackson. And then there was his aunt, Janet Jackson. Yes, Jaafar grew up in the same family that produced some of the biggest names in entertainment history. Think about that for a moment. Most children grow up hearing stories about famous musicians. Jaafar grew up having them as relatives. The Jackson family wasn't simply famous. They were musical royalty, and Jaafar was born directly into that dynasty. His parents and family, Jaafar's father, Jermaine Jackson, had already experienced decades of fame before his son was born. Jermaine was a singer, songwriter and performer who rose to international fame with the Jackson 5 before launching his own solo career. His mother is Alejandra Genevieve Oziaza, who was born in Colombia. Jaafar's parents eventually separated, but his childhood remained deeply connected to the enormous Jackson family. He also grew up alongside numerous siblings and half-siblings. His younger full brother is Your Majesty Jackson. He has several other siblings through his parents' previous relationships, giving him a large and complicated family network. And growing up in such a huge family meant that music was never very far away. There were always stories, always performances, always famous relatives, and always expectations. But Jaafar wasn't interested in simply becoming another member of the Jackson family machine. He wanted to discover his own sound, his own style, his own story. Growing up with Michael Jackson. Now comes one of the most fascinating parts of Jaafar's childhood. He wasn't simply a fan of Michael Jackson. Michael was his uncle. Jaafar was born into a world where Michael Jackson was already one of the biggest stars on earth. But to Jaafar, Michael wasn't only the king of pop. He was family. He experienced Michael away from the stage and cameras. He knew him as an uncle. And that personal connection would later become incredibly important. Because in 2009, tragedy struck. Michael Jackson died at the age of 50. Jaafar was only 12 years old. Imagine losing a beloved family member while you're still a child. And then growing up with the world constantly talking about that person. For Jaafar, Michael wasn't simply a celebrity whose music he admired. He was someone he knew personally. That made Michael's legacy both deeply personal and incredibly complicated. Education. When it comes to Jaafar's formal education, he has kept many details of that part of his life private. There isn't a widely documented public record establishing a specific university degree or major. But perhaps his most important education happened somewhere else. Inside a family filled with musicians. Inside recording studios. Around performers. And around one of the most influential entertainers of all time. From a young age, Jaafar had access to an environment most aspiring musicians could only dream about. But having access to opportunity doesn't automatically create success. Eventually, he would have to step forward himself. And that's exactly what he did. Jaafar the singer. Music wasn't just a family tradition for Jaafar. It became his own passion. In 2019, Jaafar released his debut single, Got Me Singing. The song introduced audiences to a young performer who was ready to step out from behind the Jackson surname. And this was important, because Jaafar wasn't trying to become Michael Jackson 2.0. He had his own musical influences. He was inspired by artists including Stevie Wonder and Frank Sinatra. That tells you something about his artistic direction. Jaafar wasn't interested in being trapped inside one musical style. He wanted to explore. He wanted to perform. And most importantly, he wanted people to hear Jaafar, not just Michael Jackson's nephew. But then, something happened that would completely change his career. An opportunity came knocking that nobody could have predicted. The role that changed everything. In 2023, Jaafar was announced as the actor chosen to portray Michael Jackson in the biographical film Michael. And this wasn't an ordinary casting decision. It was extraordinary, because Jaafar wasn't an established Hollywood actor. He had never professionally carried a major movie like this. And now he was being asked to portray Michael Jackson, his own uncle, one of the most recognizable people in modern history. Think about the pressure. Every movement would be examined. Every facial expression would be compared. Every dance step would be analyzed. Every performance would invite the same question. Can he really play Michael Jackson? And there was an even deeper challenge. Jaafar wasn't just portraying Michael Jackson the superstar. He was portraying a member of his own family. That meant the role carried emotional weight that few actors could ever experience. The transformation. Jaafar knew the challenge was enormous. So he committed himself to the role. He studied Michael's performances. He worked on his movements. He studied his mannerisms. He prepared himself physically and emotionally. And gradually, something remarkable began to happen. The nephew started transforming into the uncle. For audiences watching him, the resemblance became difficult to ignore. The posture, the gestures, the energy, the unmistakable Jackson presence. But the biggest challenge wasn't simply looking like Michael. It was understanding him. Michael Jackson was one of the most photographed and imitated people in history. Millions of fans already knew his movements. They knew his performances. They knew his voice. So Jaafar couldn't simply imitate him. He had to make the performance believable. And that meant stepping into the shoes of someone he had actually known. From singer to actor. For Jaafar, Michael became much more than another acting job. It became a defining moment. A young singer from one of music's most famous families was suddenly being introduced to audiences around the world as an actor. And the irony is incredible. He was given one of the hardest acting challenges imaginable. Playing his own legendary uncle. It's almost as if the Jackson family story had come full circle. Michael had once been the young Jackson trying to prove himself. Now Jaafar was the young Jackson trying to prove himself. Different generation, different era, different career, but the same pressure. Can you make your own name? His love life. Away from the cameras, Jaafar has also experienced a long-term relationship. He has been linked romantically to singer Maddie Simpson, with reports dating their relationship back to 2016. That's significant because their relationship began years before Jaafar's Hollywood breakthrough. Long before the intense spotlight surrounding Michael. And that gives their story a different kind of meaning. She knew him before the world began watching him so closely. As Jaafar's career grew, so did public interest in his personal life. And eventually, the relationship reached another major milestone. Engagement. In February 2025, Jaafar and Maddie became engaged. For someone whose family life has been surrounded by enormous fame for generations, the engagement represented something much more personal. Not a movie premiere, not a record release, not a red carpet, just two people choosing to build a future together. And as of 2026, they are engaged rather than publicly confirmed as married. There are also no publicly confirmed children. So while Jaafar's professional life is entering a major new chapter, his personal life appears to be doing the same. The shadow of Michael Jackson. But here's the question Jaafar may have to answer for the rest of his career. How do you escape the shadow of Michael Jackson when Michael Jackson is your uncle? That's not an ordinary problem. Michael's name is one of the most recognizable in entertainment. His music changed pop culture. His dance moves became legendary. His performances influenced generations. And his image became part of global history. So every time Jaafar performs, some people will inevitably compare him with Michael. But perhaps comparison isn't the goal. Perhaps the goal is something simpler. To honor the family, without becoming trapped by it. Jaafar doesn't need to become Michael Jackson. There was already a Michael Jackson. There will only ever be one. Jaafar's challenge is to become the first. Jaafar Jackson. The Jackson legacy. The Jackson family has already left an enormous mark on entertainment. The Jackson 5 changed popular music. Michael Jackson changed the global pop industry. Janet Jackson became an icon in her own right. And now another generation is stepping forward. Jaafar represents that next chapter. He carries the family's musical history. But he also carries something else. The responsibility to create something new. His journey from singer to actor could become one of the most fascinating stories in the Jackson family's continuing legacy. Because he isn't simply inheriting a famous name. He's inheriting expectations. And expectations can be heavier than fame itself. The future of Jaafar Jackson. So where does Jaafar go from here? Will he continue making music? Will acting become his main career? Will he take on more major Hollywood roles? Or will he combine music and acting to create a completely different path? Nobody knows exactly what the future holds. But one thing is certain. Jaafar Jackson is no longer simply known as Jermaine Jackson's son. And he is no longer simply known as Michael Jackson's nephew. He has stepped onto a much bigger stage. And now, the world gets to decide whether it sees a Jackson family member. Or a star in his own right. Perhaps the most fascinating thing about Jaafar Jackson's story is that he was born with something most people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. A legendary name. But a famous name can open a door. It cannot guarantee what's waiting on the other side. Jaafar still has to sing. He still has to act. He still has to perform. And he still has to prove himself. Michael Jackson left behind a legacy that may never be duplicated. But Jaafar doesn't have to duplicate it. He can honor it, learn from it, and then build something completely his own. Because the Jackson story didn't end with Michael. It didn't end with the Jackson 5. And it certainly doesn't end here. Maybe, Jaafar Jackson is simply the beginning of the next chapter. And the most exciting part. That chapter is still being written.